use at the base, including some food and beverage on the northeast corner here, residential entry and lobby space, and some parking, partial parking that's outdoor, accessed off the alley, and some that's in a covered parking garage. Kind of one of the big goals that we've tried to present on this site plan and some of the text on the right is that as a team, Meridian 105 and LCP has really made it a priority to make this a very active and useful streetscape along Jason Street. We obtained some early feedback from the neighborhood group that really Jason was viewed as a street that had potential to be kind of like a main street. So we focused a lot of the design of those elements along that streetscape there. And of course, the parking element is accessed off the alley. So we might jump to the next page now. This is really just a board of different images of other projects that we like and that we think are representative of the color and material palette that we want to use on this building. Right now, we're proposing a building that has a koya, which is a type of wood product that is a sustainably forested wood that has a 50-year warranty and a lot of longevity, but it comes in a variety of different colors like gray and natural wood tones. And we're also looking at some corrugated metals, again, something that has a large recycling or recycled content for some of the cladding on the building exterior. And I think what this image also shows is just very thoughtful and clean detailing. We can jump to the next page, I think. So this is our conceptual rendering from the intersection at Jason Street. And again, what this shows is, you know, our goal for creating this active and vibrant streetscape along Jason Street, with the restaurant entry at the corner there in the foreground, and a continuation of a facade or a colonnade that runs along the entire frontage of the building there. We want to do a lot of landscape upgrades to the street, make it very pedestrian friendly, and just have a lot of circulation that kind of comes through that front facade of the building. I think another interesting aspect of the building design is that there's 3 volumes that create the upper levels of the building. Each of those volumes is kind of like a wing that has residential units in it, but they actually are designed to step back as they kind of get further south in the building from the corner. And what that does is it allows more hours of daylight into those courtyard spaces and into those plazas down below. So as the sun kind of moves from east to west, it'll get a little bit more sunlight at street level. You can move to the next slide, I think. This is our concept image for this at-grade patio space that faces Jason Street. Our idea for this restaurant is it really kind of just flows into the street and really feels like it's a part of the streetscape. You can probably move on. This is the rear of the building. Again, units on the rear. We've got a short balcony or a second floor balcony that is a walkout for the units that abut that. And we are planning to incorporate a canopy along the back that's kind of like a carport that would be made out of repurposed materials of the existing steel industrial building that's there on site now. So those brackets would be used from the frame that's actually in that building right now. And we would try to use some of the corrugated metals on the roof of that to create a little carport. So again, just trying to make it a very sustainable building with, a palette of materials that has some that are repurposed from on-site and others that have highly recycled content or sustainably forested woods. I'm not sure if that's the last slide. Is there another one after that? Okay, so this is just a basic section of the building. What it does show is just the slope of the property that's out there now. The alley side is about 7 to 8 foot higher than it is down at Jason Street, which is actually kind of nice because it allows us to do some tall retail spaces on the east side of the building, and really, I think, minimizes the massing or the size of the parking component along the back. Is that the last slide? I think it might be.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
So I definitely open up to the floor. What I did want to ask was, is anybody on the call who responded to the letter that the development team sent out about this project, telling them that this was being presented here? I think many of us or some of us have already seen this, which was last month, and we've been talking to the developer, but wanted to see if anybody, adjacent to this property had any questions or comments. I know 3 people had reached out to me about it.
I have a quick question. If you might be able to elaborate a little bit more on where the parking is going to be located. I'm on Kalamath, a block over. Was just hoping to get an understanding of that.
Yeah, I think that if we can jump back to the first page in the set. There's 2 portions of the parking right now. Everything that's drawn as a parking lot that's got a white tone on it is under the building in a parking garage. The other parking that's on the left side of that site plan is accessed off of the alley there. And there's a row of parking spaces that are accessed from the alley there. And those are the ones that are under that canopy that was shown in that last rendering. So most of them are in the garage, a few of them are off the alley.
Got it. Thank you.
And who was that with the question that lived on Calumet?
Yeah, sorry, my name's Dave.
Okay, hi Dave. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Anyone else who is attending specifically in response to the notification that went out? Just want to make sure those folks get a chance first.
Joining or letting.
Nope, there are a couple other people who had asked about this meeting because they reached out for this meeting invite. I will make sure that they get the recording of this call, a link to the recording, so they have an opportunity to review this. And then the development team, just notified me that if those folks have, questions and they're willing to, talk to them about whatever concerns or questions they have. So now, if we can open it up to the floor. I think somebody put in chat. Okay, within what geography were letters sent? And I think LCP, the question is for you guys.
It was all neighbors that were either abutting or adjoining the property.
Okay, yeah, and to be honest, I wish I'd known about that. I think I would have gone a little further than that, especially to me, the folks who live in Zia, that's a lot of folks over there. And especially, we were having this conversation before, there's issues with some parking or just issues with, that's the first group that is living in that area. It's kind of like the, kind of the starter there. And, they may have had some questions or comments, life, whatever they may bring that a lot of us don't, because, we live half a mile away in a single family home. So I wish we had, asked that group for their opinion or feedback. And Bobby, who's on our board, he does live over there. So, Bobby, do you see any concerns over there, kind of, from your experience at ZIA, kind of in a similar setting? Anything that you'd want to bring up here?
Yeah, so we had a few direct questions. Something we've kind of talked about on the board here is with these really big properties, how many units is this again? Like 100 or so?
It's 72 or 73, I think.
Okay, and just quickly, are those parking spots in the alley actually required for the zoning code, or do you have any excess in there?
We don't have any excess, they're required.
Okay, because something we were talking about as a group is with these larger buildings, like at ZIA, we have multiple freight delivery, loading and unloading every day, as well as moving vehicles for people moving in and out. And if we have a restaurant there, you'd probably have like a Cisco truck or whatever delivering daily or several times a week. So we wanted to be able to allow that to occur, preferably not on the street in the alley. And I see there's a loading bay there, but just considering, we have Amazon, USPS, UPS, FedEx, quite often they come at the same time. It'd be nice to see maybe a little bit bigger loading area than that. And we were wondering if possibly some of those parking spaces in the alley could be removed to utilize that, but I know you have a quota to beat the code. So I'm wondering if you could just talk to that maybe, or if there was any flex in there somewhere with things you could do.
Yeah, I mean, we've been trying to find extra parking spaces. When we first created this plan, we were looking at a CRX zoning and have since been persuaded more towards the URX, which has a higher parking requirement. So it's put us in a spot where we're more trying to gain parking stalls. We are still maintaining the loading space. It's in possibly going to have to move around a little bit from where it is, but we do have a large loading space, per the feedback that the city zoning department has given us thus far.
I've got a question.
I'd like to say one thing regarding parking and transportation demand management and loading and that sort of thing. It's really hard to ask an individual developer to solve a problem that is a district-wide problem. And I would recommend that we put in our notes for a future meeting to have a conversation on more district-wide strategies to deal with the transportation and parking issues that are going to just happen, and loading and all of that business that are going to happen because of the massive increase in density that we're expecting.
That's a good call out. Thank you. I'm going to read a question in chat from Jonathan. What is the current zoning? Are you asking the city for further height, density, et cetera, in your zoning ask?
The current zoning is IMX 3, industrial mixed use 3. Our original request was for CRX 5, which would allow for 5 stories of development, so 2 additional stories over the current zoning. And further conversations with the city and understanding their goals and expectations for this area, we have been guided towards a URX 5 zoning. The density under that zoning is identical to what we were originally pursuing, so 5 stories. And as far as the height, I'm not sure, Chad, can you comment what our maximum height is there?
I think the maximum height is 70 feet, but we're trending towards a 62 to 63 foot tall building.
Jonathan, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know, Matt, I know you're on the call. I don't know if it would it be helpful for anyone to understand, well, what's the big differences between the CRX5 and URX5? I don't know if anybody has a, 2-sentence type of, what's the, why, I mean, other than parking, which somebody
The
said.
biggest thing that we've seen is the parking requirement.
Okay,
And that seems consistent with what we've found talking to the zoning administrator. There might be a little bit difference in terms of the amount of glazing at the street level, but I don't think we're exceeding that in either zoning, in either capacity. So I think the biggest impact on what we were working on was the parking, and we've been able to satisfy the larger demand of the URX zoning.
thank you. Any other comments or questions here on this project specifically?
Yeah, one kind of just very little one-off thing. It would be great. I don't know what the feasibility is if you could put that transformer either in a well or in the building.
Is it, are you trying to get it further from the street corner on 42nd?
So this is kind of an ongoing discussion amongst the group, but in general, we're trying to go with as least visible as possible. So either, definitely away from sidewalks, definitely surrounded by landscaping, but really most preferred would be underground or contained within the building.
Okay. I think we can work towards making an effort to do that. I think there is an opportunity to push it much further down the alley towards the south, maybe even on the south edge of the property, if you'd find that to be acceptable as well.
Yeah, okay, I guess I'm looking at the block map here. So there's an adjacent property to the south of it, so it would be quite hidden on the south end. Yeah, that would be better.
Okay.
Just for your edification, a lot of that is dictated to us by Excel, and a vault is, or a pit are not acceptable. It has to be on grade, and putting them down below in any kind of sunken piece would constitute kind of some problematic issues for water and other. Putting them inside of the building is only an exception that we get in the downtown district. So Arapahoe Square, Rhino, Central, CBD. It's very difficult to get an allowance to put a transformer inside of a building outside of those districts. I would love to do it better, but Chad, good to see you. It's been a minute.
Yeah, how you doing? I'll have to catch up outside of this.
Anyone else with comments or questions? And Chris, how are we doing on time?
I'm right on schedule. So good on time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just let us know when we're running out of time for this topic, so we can move on. But if there aren't any more questions, we could move on. So the development team and a few of us on the land use committee are discussing a memorandum of understanding, and we're going to go over one of them next, so then you have an idea of what mostly is in them. However, they'll be different from project to project, especially one that's on federal versus one that's over here in the TOD area. But we are working with them on that. I mean, I'd love to, if we had to, we're going to be taking votes slightly differently in the future. We're going to want to put them out to the community with, an explanation and summary of what has transpired, and if we're going to be supporting it, why, along with the memorandum of understanding itself, sharing aspects of it. So we're going to be moving to a slightly different way of taking votes. So we'll be sending out to the community via a survey and keeping it open for a week. However, beyond the MOU that we're working on, how does this group feel about, Sunnyside providing a letter of support to this project? So I just want to kind of get people's, initial feedback. There will be a formal vote process, but does anyone object to, supporting this project? All right. So that's good. So yeah, if there's nothing further on this project, we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
Wait,
And go ahead.
wait, we need, sorry. I'd like to make some motions about this.
Sure.
I think we need a motion for a letter of support. Are we at that point?
We can be. I mean, it is dependent on the MOU still, but you know.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve a letter of support for the project.
Second.
Contingent on finalizing the MOU.
I second the motion.
All right. Do we have yays? I don't know what the best way to do this. If you're all on camera, vote, you know, with your hand. Or I can go right down because we only have about 13 people on this call. Or I can just go with any nays. That might be the shorter list on here. Do we have any resident, you know, a SUNI member? That means you live here, you own property here, or your business is in the boundaries of Sunnyside. You would be able to vote on this item. So anybody from that group, a nay.
This is Lindsay Topping. I am a property owner at 4125 Jason Street.
Okay.
I apologize deeply. I was trapped with kids. Evenings are challenging. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, so I can't say much, but I would like to get some more information before saying anything. I don't know if you guys have notes or if there's a way to accommodate that. I apologize. Evenings are hard again.
Yep. Yes, we can. And give me your address again.
We are at 4125 Jason Street. We are directly south of the property, so this impacts us immensely.
So yeah, this meeting is recorded. We have the presentation that's, I'll put it into chat, the link to our Google Drive. And once we have a draft memorandum of understanding that we can share, that too will be placed on there. So I think the biggest challenge for this project is that they have a planning board hearing date, and please correct me if it's wrong. I think it's February 13th, or is it 16th?
16th, the Wednesday.
Okay, so we need to just kind of tie all of that up if we're going to be providing a letter of support, you know, at least a week ahead. So Lindsay, I will reach out to you and you know, help answer any questions or get you in touch with the development team in case you have questions that I wouldn't be able to answer, and I'll share everything that we've have so far with you. And there's a couple of other people who were adjacent to this property who did not come today, maybe 2 or 3 more, and I'm going to make sure that they get the recording. And so I'll send Lindsay, if you can drop your email into the chat, I will get that, and I'll include all of you guys with, you know, an opportunity to learn more or share.
Yeah, and we've actually been in loose contact with the developers' attorneys. I think we're just waiting for some information. So yeah, I would look forward to a conversation with them.
All right, well, that's wonderful. And actually, you know, we are working on a memorandum of understanding where we're asking the developer to agree to certain things. So, you know, Lindsay, if there are items of concern that you're negotiating with them and you're getting some agreement or some, you know, concession, whatever it is, however that's working, you know, please let us know, because we could put that into that memorandum of understanding as well. And if
that's great, thank you.
Okay, so yeah. Anybody else? So this one, you know, this would be the difficult one to get out to the public with enough time for everybody to, you know, be able to give us their yes or no on. So on this one, we may have to move with just the, you know, the group that we have here today with the approval, but it's something we're changing for future on how we do this, just to be more inclusive and to get more information out to the community.
And again, I apologize from a procedural standpoint. Once everyone agrees to getting some sort of memorandum of understanding, does that mean that you guys are giving your blessing, or does it mean that you're just continuing the discussion?
Lindsay, we made a motion,
Sorry.
and I don't know if you were on the call. You came in right after we made the motion to support the project contingent on finalizing the MOU. And that was after nobody had objected. So
And I'm not saying I have any objections. I think it looks beautiful. We just have questions, right? Like, so by no means. And again, I missed the presentation. I looked at the PDF. I this is definitely not an objection. It's just, we have open questions.
Okay, good. So are you okay then with the motion was to support the project contingent on finalizing the MOU, which would mean finishing conversations with you and making sure that any concessions and so forth are made with you all are represented in the MOU. Is that okay with you?
I think it's likely okay. I mean, we definitely don't want to hang anything up. It looks beautiful. It looks like it would be a great addition to the neighborhood and developing that area. So yeah, I don't think we have any huge objections outside of kind of open discussions.
Great. Okay. And Trupti, I've got two more motions related to things that we talked about during this call. The first motion would be for us to schedule a future meeting to discuss TDM and parking management strategies in the larger district.
Second.
Okay. And do you want to?
Yeah, and anyone object to adding an agenda item for future for basically, the discussions that we need to be having about these types of things? Yeah, I didn't think there would be.
With just us, or do you want to pull in people from the city proper?
No, this would be for a district. So it's sort of related to your project, but not solely you all, but for the broader district. I'm wanting to get this into the minutes so that we know that there are items for us to follow up on. It isn't specific to your project. It's specific to the transit station area.
Catherine, that was actually me, Jonathan, asking, and not the group, and asking sort of like, great, let's put it on the agenda in the future, but do we want that discussion just within our SUNY neighborhood group, or do we want to be pulling in people from the city government?
Absolutely pulling people from the city in, and probably looking around there. Boulder has done really wonderful things with parking demand management and transportation demand management. So I would like to try to invite some people from Boulder to come and speak to our group about their strategies.
And this kind of ties into some of the improvements that we want to make with this meeting, with this committee, and really to have discussions that are, needed to support a lot of the work that's happening, but we're not having discussions about, the cars and demand management, but we're approving buildings and zonings that are bringing in the cars, right? So, as a organization and as a community, we should be having these discussions. And at the end of the day, this stuff is probably going to have to get adopted into NPI, when that time comes. But it's really about our community having these conversations so that we can be informed and kind of make decisions, based on facts and fact finding, rather than, opinion. For the most part. So I think it's important to note that going forward, we'll be adding educational discussion topics that are relevant to what's happening in our community in this forum, because this is really right now the only forum we have to do those kinds of things. So just something to look forward to. Thank you, Catherine. You said you had another one too.
The other one is to a motion to engage the city in a conversation about locating transformers inside of buildings and extending those standards that they have with Rhino, Arapahoe Square, other districts that are very similar to our transit station area, since we're downtown adjacent, essentially. I think there's a reason to ask for that.
Second.
Okay, thanks.
Any
Anyone
objection?
opposed?
Seeing none, we could add that.
Okay, all right, great, thanks.
Thanks, guys. All right. So the memorandum of understanding, this is a new thing for us. Thank you guys at LCP. We'll be in touch. Obviously, I'll loop you guys in with the few people who reached out about being here tonight, but who weren't, and make sure that their questions are answered. And obviously, we're going back and forth with the MOU right now. So thank you very much for coming and sending the letter out and working with us on this.
Thank you. And Tribute, just kind of from a procedural standpoint, I know there was a vote taken on the letter of support. I think I heard no objections. And again, I'm not sure, is that what the kind of procedure is for the vote? Hearing none, does that mean that this committee now has approved the project in terms of the neighborhood support, or will there be, and I understand that the motion was subject to the MOU, but is there another vote or process that will take place at a second time, or is this, at this point, do we feel that we have support of the neighborhood?
So here's where, because of the timing, the challenge with your project is because you guys have a deadline and we didn't start this earlier. What we're going to be doing going forward for votes is going to be slightly different than what we're doing today for you right now. We will be actually submitting all of this to the community and giving them a week to respond back and to give, again, support. And basically, it'll just be information we include in the letter we provide, that we took a community vote, we took a vote here, that's going to be recorded, but also the community vote, and just put that information down, which is, this is how many people gave a yes or a no on this project. And then along with that would be the support that the smaller land use committee that is going to be making some of those decisions, taking into account all the stuff that we've already talked about. So for you guys, this is actually it, other than the contingency for the MOU. For projects in the future where we are not behind on time and things happening over holidays, our procedure is going to be slightly different. And it's just an improvement that we're making going forward. So, but the way we just did it now is how it has been done in this committee in the past.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let me pull up, and actually, Chris, could you pull up the this memorandum of understanding from the drive, and then I'll walk through that. So we're kind of embarking on this because, and some of the stuff we're talking about is part of it, is we have no small area plan currently. And Chris, if you need help, let me know. We don't have a small area plan. So
I need you to pull that up. I don't have access to that directory.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, guys. There's always something. Yeah, you'll have to give me a second. And Catherine, you can, while I'm looking for this, if you can kind of just share kind of what we've kind of been doing with federal and the why, right? The rationale for doing this is because we don't have design standards. We don't have a small area plan. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that while I go get this document up?
Sure.
Thank you.
So we are looking at a structure for memorandum of understanding between the neighborhood and development teams that are coming in asking for rezonings or similar types of requests for support from the neighborhood. And the structure of the MOU starts with a series of whereas statements, and those are really aspirational kind of summarizing maybe what some of the challenges are, what some of the opportunities are with a new zone district, and how those might forward goals and objectives that we've heard over the course of the last 4 years, as we've been talking more about design and desirable development in our neighborhood. So if some of you on the call may recall that we, about 4 years ago, started identifying neighborhood sub areas. We broke the neighborhood into residential conservation, character conservation area, main streets, and transit-oriented development sub areas. And we went through a series of workshops where we identified goals and objectives for those areas. We looked at a whole variety of architectural images to make sure we all were on the same page in terms of the kind of character that we want to see in those areas. And so what we're doing in the whereas statements is memorializing that, since we don't have a plan that is providing that sort of context for a development team. And we're trying to get consistent language into these so that as more projects come in, they're continuing to align with the direction that we want to go as a neighborhood. And we'll continue to build on this. We are very open, of course, to people participating more. Trupti is one of our representatives on the Neighborhood Planning Initiative. Ramon Vargas, who's joined us tonight, thank you for doing that, is on the call. These are people that we need to be talking to and making sure that they're on board with the conversations that are happening at the Land Use Committee and with developers. So we have the whereas statements, and then that goes from that section into the agreements that we're making with the development teams. And then we are also asking, we're still working out how this language works, but deed restrictions that would protect us if maybe a development gets our support, but it doesn't actually come to fruition, then we want some sort of deed restriction on the property that would ensure that a future development team would come back and draft a memorandum of understanding for their project. So we're still kind of working out that language and sunsetting of that kind of a provision and making sure that it works smoothly for all of the players and doesn't commit either the neighborhood association or future landowners to details that might be in the MOU that are no longer relevant, either because the project was constructed and it's done, or because the project didn't move forward, but we still need to have some sort of understanding with development teams moving forward. That may have been a little bit lengthy. Sorry. I hope that you guys got that. But if you have any questions, jump in.
So a few years ago, there was on the west side of Federal, there was a carve out for a church. They were given new zoning and then they immediately sold it to a developer who put in a giant apartment. I assume this is to try and avoid that kind of accidental change.
Exactly. So what we recognize is that, you can come in, you can show a lot of pretty pictures, get an upzoning, and then you've massively increased the value of a piece of property. And what we're trying to do is protect our position that we don't agree to an upzoning without having something in our back pocket that says it's an upzoning for this. And if you don't build that, the property is then deed restricted to come, whoever picks it up has to come back to the neighborhood and renegotiate a memorandum of understanding before they get approval to move forward.
Hi, this is Trupti, and I think, when I started with this, and it was really one of the development team's idea, believe it or not, it was about getting what we were shown, right? We want to make sure that that's what happens, because without this, there is no guarantee that what they build is what they, shared with us. So this is what we're trying to do here, but to the extent that we add, consistent language, it makes it much easier for this group and the meeting, and depending on whoever's leading it, also easier to have these kind of consistent conversations. And at the end of the day, for the development team, adding some predictability, right? They don't walk into this meeting having no idea, what we want, what we seek, so to me, I think it's going to be helpful for the development team as well, at least from that predictability aspect side of it. And this is also on the draft in this version, because this section is actually the section that is still open. There's either additional language that needs to go in here that we're having back and forth, but this is also on the SUNI public drive in a folder with their presentation and their rendering that they shared. So this is available, but know that it's still in flux as far as being final. And this is new, so
Trupti, I got a question for you on this one. Having gone through a couple of rezonings in the city recently, it's almost difficult to show you exactly what the building is going to be, because from both a process that the city takes you through and an intentional limit of what we can show during the formal request for a rezoning, we are held to showing only an envelope in presentations. We show you documents, and here's forms and masses, and here's potentially what the architecture starts to look like. But when we take that formal step with the city, we can only show the glass box in which the zoning envelope is approved. Okay. So it's sometimes difficult. I mean, part of it is once you select a district, or once you select a zone lot, a URX, a UMX, that comes with some limiters in terms of what those uses and functions are, right? Retail, residential. We cannot go build a church or an apartment building where a church was today. If it was zoned for a municipal kind of allowable, that's really hard for us to actually shift that within the code. So I guess what my question would be, how do you negotiate this on every parcel of land that gets rezoned if they are unwilling to go into a deeded condition? Because that is, for some landowners, very difficult, because they don't have the ability to encumber the land like that.
And so obviously these folks who are going from USUC1 to UMX3, you see what they're agreeing to, right? So, and obviously we have the sunset, because they're going to turn around and these are going to be for sale, right? And we're having this stuff sunset at the CO level, so the certificate of occupancy, because we don't want to encumber stuff, and people further down, but they're able to do that. I mean, I'd love to talk to you offline if that makes sense, because I want to hear your concerns, but I want to understand, what.
Can I jump in and say something, Trupti?
Go for it.
I think to Matt's point, Jonathan mentioned a project that was over at 32nd and Lowell, and it was the sale of a church property, and they had proposed a medical office building, and they ended up getting the rezoning for that. And then the project didn't move forward, and another property owner, another development team picked it up, and I believe they're planning, the project hasn't come to fruition as far as I know. But they were going to do a completely different project. what we're trying to say with this deed restriction is not that something couldn't go forward, but that before another project goes forward, they come to the neighborhood association and give us some sort of commitment to what they're going to build and make a good faith effort to let us know as if they're seeking another rezoning, but just so that there's an understanding about what they're proposing to do. It's not to prevent development, but it's for the development teams to come in and have a conversation with the neighborhood to learn about, preferences that we might have, to provide enough time for the neighbors that are going to be affected to know what's happening, and to be partners in the development of the neighborhood and the growth of the neighborhood. So it's not intended to be like a big, huge hurdle. I mean, if you look at what we're negotiating here, these handful of points, they're pretty loose, and they're basically just saying, hey, this team has shown us a building containing 5 units and 2 buildings containing 2 units each, and very loose standards on the quality of the development. So it's not, it shouldn't be designed, it can't be designed to be terribly specific for all of the reasons that you mentioned. Restrictions that the city might place on the project that aren't contemplated at the time that it's coming forward for general neighborhood support, value engineering that may have to take place during the finalization of the plans. So, I mean, we're trying to keep these as loose as we can, but also as close to.
Enter your meeting ID.
Sorry,
Followed by.
trying to get on this call.
That's okay.
Yeah, just an update for folks. So you're a bit behind schedule on this topic.
Okay.
It's been like
I'll
20
stop
minutes
talking now,
versus
sorry.
the 10 on the agenda.
Yeah, so I mean, we can continue these discussions, and Matt, I think, you've brought stuff to us, we can go through this more in detail. And again, take a look at it. It's online, it's available. This is where we're going. We're really just looking at this final piece. But we're also doing this with Jason. So Jason's also currently looking at a version, but designed for their space that looks very different. So a lot of the whereas statements are similar, but more specific to TOD. And then what we're asking them for is, and to be honest with you, what they've shown us and what they've agreed to, a majority of that is what we're putting in there, just saying, okay, just build us something that looks that way, or it contains certain things that the community asked for. So, and Matt, the last point is, this is only to get the community letter of support. You don't need that to go in front of the zoning board, right? And it's not as if everything the community may have, if they objected to something, doesn't mean it binds the planning board from moving forward either, right? So this is specific to only our letter of support.
I will say, though, a project team probably doesn't want to go in front of the planning board without letters of support from the neighborhood.
Yeah, you're not going to get very far there.
So you should go on to the next topic, Turkey.
Thank you. So the next part was just to make sure we get a couple of updates, and I may let, I was going to see, I know Naomi, are you still on? I thought she was on before. Well, I think she is. Okay.
She's on. She might have stepped away for a second.
No, that's fine. I just want to make, so I think I'm going to have her do that. On the Fox Park connectivity study, if you guys were following, along from the fall, when they said, a pedestrian bridge that, well, something they told us was going to be most likely a pedestrian bridge was now going to be multimodal vehicular access. And we asked the development team to do some community outreach with multiple communities so that, Gloveville isn't talking to just Gloveville folks and we're talking to just a few folks here. So we're going to be talking to them later this month I think is the 25th, and we'll report out of that conversation about that community outreach process to discuss the vehicular access, the north-south connectivity to Globeville, which is what they're working on. I believe they have 2 options, but I think only one they feel is doable, so which would be that bridge into Sunnyside. But we want to make sure they have a community outreach process that includes all 3 communities that are impacted. So that's the work that we're working, that's what we're doing now to set those conversations up. And obviously those will be meetings that are different than our monthly land use meeting. We'll have special meetings specifically for the Fox Park connectivity. Any questions on that?
Yeah, Tripti, I had a question on the agenda in the description of this and the description of the Fox Point connectivity. It was described that the plan that's been released is controversial. Could you comment on where that description is coming from?
Catherine, I think this was your addition.
I think, yeah, it's controversial, Bill, in that for years they talked about it being a bike ped bridge, and then a handful of weeks before the TIF hearing, they let us know that it's now under consideration for a car bridge. And I don't think that they have done substantial outreach to residents who would be affected by what would essentially be a freeway bypass running through our station area. So that is a very controversial thing. So anyways, there are, in order to prepare for the conversation with the Fox Park people, we put together a series of resources on TOD planning and things that are being done in other cities around the globe, really emphasizing that if you want successful TOD, you have to build a place for people and not a place for cars. There was also quite a bit of information it's very dense to get through on trip generation, but it's very well researched information about how land use and the kinds of trips that are generated by land use go hand in hand. And trips are not just vehicle trips. You've got bikes, peds, and transit users. So we kind of live under a myth that the only way to get around a city is with cars. And Denver's made a massive commitment to the tune of billions of dollars in our transit infrastructure. And we are now at this very pivotal point in implementing the development to support it. So the idea that they would be introducing a car bridge at this stage is a bit shocking, and
Well,
probably
Catherine,
not
I think,
the direction we want to go in.
well, that's your opinion, and I respect your opinion, and I appreciate
No,
that
it's
they're
not really an opinion. It's 30 years of evidence-based
Can I-
experience in city planning.
Well, if I can finish, I let you finish. I think that is your opinion. I understand that it's likely the opinion of many others, and there are probably others that have the alternative opinion. 2 points I would simply make are that you've been selective in your memory of what's been proposed. Previous to it going to a bike ped, there were also discussions very early on that had the full multimodal included. So it's gone back and forth a couple of times, and I would agree with you that it was a surprise the way they presented it. But I don't think that alone, in my opinion, it does not make it controversial. I think this is an important topic that needs to get full visibility so that both sides, people that want the multimodal and people who don't, can air their opinions, and we can really find out where the entire community feels about it, rather than, a select group of people that feel it's controversial. So
That's exactly right, Bill. And that's why we want the residents of Sunnyside to be informed about what's happening.
Agreed. That sounds great.
And this is exactly why we asked for additional meetings to discuss the options. Like for, right now, I'd love to know, like, if they're thinking it and planning it, where exactly is it going to be? Which businesses are going to have to be taken out? Or is there space already to have this and it not cut through our community? Are all the landowners over there where this bridge is going to be, are they all informed? I haven't seen any of those folks, participate. And I think that's our goal, is to make sure that there is visibility in terms of what they're doing, and the folks who are impacted, especially to me, those businesses over there as well, are participating in this.
And I will say too, kind of piggybacking on that, Trupti, is, really looking at, in order to provide access to that area, does it have to be direct access by car to the front door of the development? Or, could we build a parking structure on the Sunnyside side of things that, becomes a reservoir of parking that is much needed, frankly, based on earlier conversations for the Jason Street project and the pressure that's already being felt in the area? And is that something that would allow us to build a bridge that is more like an NYC High Line instead of a bridge that is primarily serving the interests of vehicles? And if we do something like that, there's also the potential to bleed the positive impacts of TOD development up into the Pecos area. So I think what's been missing in the conversations is not so much this, opinions one way or another about whether or not a car bridge is the right thing to do, but looking at all of the alternatives and alternative development scenarios and really analyzing those and understanding what opportunities we may not have even considered yet that are less expensive, that are much more supportive of actual TOD development, and that have a greater catalytic effect on a broader part of the neighborhood. That's, the area around Pecos and I-70 is really challenging and really dominated by cars. If we end up doing a freeway bypass through the TOD area, that impact is just going to get worse. Or, we maybe look at some other scenarios. So I don't want to belabor it. I'll shut up now, but I think it's exciting that the project team is interested in having these conversations and looking at different solutions, alternative solutions.
Anyone else on the Fox Park connectivity? Any questions? All right, we're going to move on. We will be sharing information about upcoming meetings. That's the discussion we're having later this month. And all of this stuff, all the discussions that we're kind of having here are the ones that really need to be had there with more people and from multiple neighborhoods, so that we can all understand each other's needs and opinions, as well as alternatives. All right, neighborhood planning initiative. So I am asking, we're putting these into, updates for every month. We're asking the city staff to come to these meetings, provide an update. If they can't come every single month, provide a written update. I've asked the steering committee members to actually come here and, just to introduce themselves. And I will continue to do that. On the planning initiative, there's a folder on Drive, and I got a written update from Ella Stevie, who is the project manager, or at least interim project manager for the city. Sorry if I don't get the titles correct. She sent a written update about what's been done so far, what's upcoming, with a lot of links to a lot of information. So there's an engagement strategy. There's a, smaller so far, how we've engaged so far. There is the pattern book that's on there. So all of these are links that you can get to from the document, and we will continue to, bring you information about what's happening. What has happened so far is they've done an assessment, right? And if you look through the engagement strategy, you'll see that they were present at many, maybe 25, 30 different events in the 4 neighborhoods. And then they've had 6 steering committee members where it's really been very guided, and they're, because we're working within certain framework of topics like land use or health or resiliency. And really they're much broader, like what's the vision? And they've compiled all this stuff together, and now they're coming back to the neighborhood between mid-February through the spring. They're going to be doing, in-person and virtual events. And I think at the end of this month, a letter will go out to everybody who signed up for email updates, telling them about the schedule of events and how they can participate. In the meantime, feel free to look through all of the attached, linked documents. These are all actually on the city website. There is a lot of information, but in the future, we want to be able to have a discussion with the city staff here who can, ask questions. So we can ask questions, they can answer questions, specific questions about process. Right now, there is a lot of information about what they're doing. It's a lot to read, and I can understand folks not going through 100-page presentations, but there is a lot of stuff developed. But the pattern book and the general assessment and where we are, there's some really, really good information about the demographics, the changing demographics, income, who's responding, who's not responding. And the steering committee is only one of like 12, 13, maybe more of their engagement strategies. The steering committee is not there to go into the neighborhood itself. They're not, at least for now, they're not expected to. Either way, they're not expected to.
Tripti, just to keep you updated, you're about 15 minutes behind schedule now.
That's fine. The rest of the stuff is all us, and it's informational, so no one's waiting on us except Naomi, and she'll definitely have time to just give us a quick update. But either way, so we're going to make it so that we try to give you an update on a monthly basis, either written or a city staff individual comes to our R&O meeting. So that is what I'm working with.
Tripti, I'd like to make a motion that our neighborhood associations send a request to have a representative from the city show up at every land use committee meeting while the neighborhood plan initiative is in process, to listen to residents. This is the R&O is the way that the city has structured communications between neighborhoods and the city. And the members of the steering committee representing us were selected by Amanda in the city. There was no vetting process with the neighborhood.
That's not accurate. There was
yeah,
vetting
that is
process.
accurate.
So no,
I'm sorry.
it wasn't. You don't get to tell me what's accurate or not accurate, and you don't get to throw me under the bus. So there was a vetting process. It was very extensive. If you'd like an update
Who
on
was
it,
involved?
I'm
I'm sorry,
happy to
who
do
was
that.
involved in the vetting process?
Lots of people. I mean, there was a whole entire rubrics of what we went through and talked about it, and talked about ethnicity, talked about how long people had lived in the neighborhood.
Who was involved from the neighborhood?
I'm not explaining. You asked the process, so if you want the answer, let me finish. Don't interrupt. So it wasn't hand selected. First of all, people wanted to be part of it. It was done throughout outreach through this group. This organization sent out information. I sent out information. The city sent out information. The city hosted an ad to participate. You put your information and you went through that. You submitted your name, and then a rubrics was created, similar to how all things are created in the city. And so we talked about demographics. We talked about ethnicity.
When you say, Amanda, when you say we, Who are you talking about?
Well, it was multiple people because I talked to R&O people. So I had talked to Bill and Trupti about what their considerations were. I talked to Jason Horniak in Chaffee Park about what he thought his considerations were. I talked to Jefferson Park, what their considerations were. And I talked to Highland and I asked them what they wanted and what they were seeking in people who wanted to represent their community. And most everything was consensus that they only wanted one R&O representative from each area because not everybody feels welcomed at a registered neighborhood organization. Not everybody feels in tune. Some people feel excluded. Some people don't speak that language. So we wanted people from DPS. We wanted parents. We wanted people who had different networks. A lot of time R&O members talk to other R&O members, and we wanted a diverse group of people. So the fact that there's 2 Latinos on Sunnyside, where Sunnyside is right for like in the process of being gentrified, and one of them is a 2nd generation Northsider who does not want to be part of the R&O. She said it. And so we felt, she said she feels that's representative of her neighborhood. And so you could say I statements because you feel that way. Not everybody feels that way. And then we've been holding people accountable because there isn't good representation in all the R&Os. Sunnyside probably has the best after Highland. And the only R&O who has been saying anything about hand selected is you, Catherine. Everyone else feels like they have a really good diverse group of people that make up their neighborhood. So you're the only one I have heard this from.
So I still would like to request that we have our neighborhood send a request to the city to have a city planner show up at each of our R&O meetings to give an update and to listen to the people that are participating at the R&O level. This is how we speak to the city.
So,
and for a city planner not to show up during a 2-year process at every opportunity to speak to as many people as possible is just it's unbelievable to me.
You're muted.
Hi, this is Trupti. So I'm just going to add, because I'm on the steering committee, I do feel that the steering committee has a cross section of people. If that was their goal, I believe they've, achieved it. I don't think the steering committee is the only avenue for engagement because they're doing so much more, right? In fact, Catherine, I do suggest that you look through the documents that are in the links. So you can see the number of meetings and the number of places. I've connected them to Quig. They've gone to Quig and they had a meeting there. So, I mean, I think what's happening is, and I've actually had this conversation with Ella today, is that things that aren't visible, just like the vetting process and the rubrics, I believe they probably spent a lot of time and energy on this but because we don't see it, maybe we don't know it existed, so the steering committee is not, I don't think it's not as powerful or as you think. If you listen to the meetings, you'd know that we are 1/10 of kind of the overall picture in terms of how the city is collecting.
So Trupti, you're falling behind schedule here. There was a motion. If there's a second,
oh, sorry,
you should go ahead and vote on the motion. Otherwise, you need to move on to the other topics or you're not going to complete the items on your agenda.
I appreciate that. Do we have a second?
I'm a little vague on what we're voting on.
The motion is to request that the city send a city planner to our neighborhood association land use committee meeting to give an update and listen to people that are showing up to the neighborhood association meetings and take feedback back to the city process.
And after, if there is a second, there should be discussion before a vote.
I'll second it because the discussion will be fun.
Well, I
Well,
think we're running out of time.
I can certainly start the discussion by saying I'll vote against this motion because it's not it's not our job to be dictating the city where they spend their limited resources in this particular case. They've had a lot of outreach, steering with Tripty on the steering committee. I just don't think this is a worthy motion and one that's really something that we're focusing on.
And I would ask Councilwoman Sandoval, do you feel that that is something the city has the ability to provide? You know, is there a city planner that could be made available, or would we be asking for something that's just technically impossible?
Amanda,
That's a great
if I might,
question, Jonathan. So currently, right now, all the community planning and development, from what I've heard, is down 20% staff. And so I think in time, once positions are filled, but we don't even have as many people, planners on this plan that we had when it started, because people have left. Like Ella was not leading this plan. It was Liz. And one of the things that we talked about when it started is that the role of the steering committee members were to be that conduit. And that's why we only had one RNO. I think it's feasible to say, could you come every other month? I think that, or if Trupti is feeling overwhelmed with her responsibility, Naomi, my staff, she attends all of the meetings as well, and we can fill in. But just so you know, this is the only RNO that is making this request, because the other RNOs are focusing their energy on doing outreach to their community. Like Highland had this huge gathering on Platt Street by someone who's not even on the steering committee. It was the president, and then she invited steering committee members there, and then some of the consultants. So I think that maybe between the consultants and the city staff, maybe someone can come every other month, but every month, I think that there's plenty of other resources to be able to give an update in between.
I think it should also be noted that when we've made requests for somebody to present, they've always been willing to do so. So whether it's requesting that they're more frequent or we just make more frequent requests, either way, I don't think dictating once a month is the proper methodology.
and I'll add that I also am not in favor of saying somebody must show up, because honestly, look at the number of people on here. Okay. It's not as if we have hundreds of people here. If we had lots of people here, maybe that would make more sense. And also, Ella did say she'd send a written one for every month, if that's what we'd want, some update, something I can give back to you guys and we can house and store. As well as they will come, when they have milestones to share. So right now, I know they've been working, because I've been having these conversations with her as well about like, how do I better inform our community? So these aren't, it's not as if, we're on two different sides here, or that they're willing to work with us as well. And I just don't know that we bring enough people here to even use their time or give them the space. Like the conversations that I think you're talking about, Catherine, that need to be had are ones that would be like hours long, and charrette style. It's not one that we could even do on this other than a quick blurb or an update, which really doesn't get at the type of conversations that are needed either.
So to keep us on schedule, are there other people that would like to contribute to the discussion, or is it time to bring the motion to a vote?
Vote.
Let's take a vote. All right. Everyone in favor?
I will be the lone vote, it sounds like.
All right. I'm going to assume that the rest are not in favor.
Correct.
Correct.
The motion passed. They are planning on showing up, just so you know. They will be here February to share, the milestones that they're reaching ahead of the community meetings that are being planned. So we will have. Thank you. All right, Naomi, you get a few minutes on the. Can you please update us on where we are on residential overlay? I know we're talking about, we're waiting for the city from the last time we met. Where are we? How soon can we convene again and move this forward?
Am I unmuted? Can
Yes.
people hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, thank gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. I had to switch to my phone because I'm having the worst connectivity problems right now, so I apologize. So yes, they are working. I can attest that they are working. We just met with them today, and we will have a much more robust update for you coming soon. So I think with the holidays, unfortunately, that's not much of an update for right now, but that's what we got.
How soon should the committee members anticipate getting together again and hearing from the city about where they landed after our last conversation?
Hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And for the rest of the group who is not as intimately involved with this, we are now at the process, we're talking with CPD and we're working on kind of drafting the language and to get it ready to go to the planning board. And, we've shared everything we had on our end with them. They're now kind of doing their due diligence and coming back to us with what's possible. So I don't know how to say it any better than that. So we're kind of on a wait, we're on a hold pattern, but the next step, the next major milestone would be taking this to the planning board. Then after that, it'll go to city council. And this is the prep for the planning board meeting that's happening that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And if I have one other update, not related to the overlay, but just other land use topics, if there's a 30 seconds for me.
Yeah.
Sure. So one thing I've been tracking for you all is the expanding housing affordability project. And this is a really, really important project that's been enabled because at the state level, cities can now have some sort of affordable housing requirement in new construction. So Denver's been working hard to come up with an ordinance that would basically incorporate that. And they should be ready with their official draft of this at the beginning of February. So just in a couple of weeks. And since, a lot of Sunnyside is pretty built out, this ordinance is intended to apply to larger buildings. So, over 8 or 10 units or so. But as we talked about today, there's a lot of probably development that will happen in the station area. So definitely want to get Sunnyside input and have you all weigh in on that draft once it's out there. So maybe at the next meeting, by the next Sunnyside Land Use meeting in February, I believe there should be a draft out. So just wanted to highlight that for y'all.
Thank you, Naomi. And I don't know if you would be the right person or, if this is within what you can do for us. Does it make sense to put this on the agenda for next month if time allows, which I hope it does, so that we can get a review or summary or, something more that, and again, we share it ahead of time with folks. But is it something worth putting on the agenda for just a general discussion?
Yeah, I think you should definitely put a placeholder on it. And we'll have to see when it actually does come out. And then B, I can do my absolute best to help guide through talking about this. Amanda has been a task force member on this project and has been heavily involved. But I I know that I, as staffing her on this, have been doing my best to follow along with some complicated financial stuff. So we can definitely put it, yeah, so long story short, put it as a placeholder and let's keep talking about the next meeting and if we can review it. But yeah, Amanda's been on that task force.
Yes, oh yeah, yeah, if it's not next month, the month after, but whenever it makes sense to put it on, it'd be great if, you know, you guys shared that with us and with some, you know, commentary, so we're kind of understanding what's happening and how that may impact Sunnyside.
And one thing, Trupti, is it's coming to, they're breaking it into sections because it's really wonky. One piece would be the linkage fee, which would be the paid part.
Yep.
One piece would be the requirements when you build, right?
Yep.
And then one would be the incentives, because we've worked to get incentives to get more affordable housing. We're breaking that into chunks to go in front of the land use and transportation committees. So what we did last time when we were working on the group living is I would send those out to all the RNOs that week. I can do that too, so that you can watch that in preparation, and they'll break it down pretty, it's so high level. They're going to break each of those 3 processes down and get really into the minutia. So we can send those out to this group as well.
That sounds great. And I'll look through the city site for any of this draft stuff. I was aware of it, but we'll share it, you know, with our on our social media and our next newsletter and such. So we'll start talking about that stuff and start sharing some of that documentation that exists and links to meetings and such. So thank you very much. The last thing we actually had, and we're not sharing anything on this because this is what we want to work on. We've talked about developing some SOPs and guiding principles for this committee and to make sure things are out on time, record keeping, but also like how best to do the voting that is as inclusive, you know, with Zoom, with recordings. People can catch this information. They don't have to be at our meeting in order to be able to participate. So just a lot of these types of things, like, again, discussions with people. So we're looking obviously for members. I've reached out to at least 10 people to ask them if they would participate, help us, you know, vet and go through and discuss and think about alternatives for these items. So, you know, anybody who's interested in joining, please, you know, drop me an email. We're thinking one long, you know, lunch meeting type of thing to knock it all out. We'll start stuff to share. So we're not starting from scratch, but then we'll have discussion about how best we can function and how best to do some of the things that the important stuff our committee does. So something we want to work on and something we look for volunteers. So that's all. The only thing we want to share is that we're working toward developing some standard practices on this committee and important things like voting. So I think we're at time. There's going to be more to come on that. You'll see a lot of this same stuff on our agenda because we're going to continue updating every month. I think for now, we know Billy Wang who was going to be on here, but he's slated so far for next month, unless that gets pushed back further. And we'll see what happens with this. And, you know, we'll bring you more information as it comes up. Anybody else? All right. Well, if there's nothing further, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was very well facilitated.
Yeah, I know. I was still talking a bit too much. I got to work on that one. Thanks.
No, it's great. Good night, everybody. Bye.
Bye.